Hey guys, and welcome to Intellectual Kung Fu, the place where you learn to kick the shit out of illogical arguments and the irrational claims they attempt to make. I am professional illusionist and philosopher Jason Jewell, and you are watching episode 3. Now, I promise to answer any questions that were sent to me through YouTube or Facebook or through email or anything like that. And while I do have a video coming out soon that addresses all of these questions that you've sent me, I recently came across one question that made me stop everything just to film a video to answer it. Because the question and answer is very relevant to the topic at hand. Okay, so this question was sent to me through Facebook, and it reads like this. Hey Jason, I see you like to talk a lot about science and philosophy, and you have told me on more than one occasion that my arguments were not logical. In my opinion, my arguments are logical, and so are my claims. When you say my argument is illogical, how is that not just your opinion? Why does your opinion have authority over my opinion? What if I said your arguments were illogical? Seriously, who decides what's really logical or illogical? The subject of logic. Okay, question. If I were to say your argument is illogical, or my argument is logical, or vice versa, would that just be my opinion? In order to answer this, we need to address a word that people use incorrectly way too much. That word is opinion. What is an opinion? An opinion is a subjective statement that is neither true nor false. It holds no truth value outside of the individual that holds it. For example, vanilla is the best flavor. This is a subjective statement. It is subject to the preference of the individual who expresses it. Because in reality, there is no best flavor. I like caramel better anyway. Or caramel? Caramel? Art, entertainment, fashion, music, these are examples of subjective concepts. If you were to evaluate the value of a song or a movie, you would do so subjectively. You can say that one song is better than another, but it will simply be a subjective opinion that has no way of confirming its truth. What about this statement? I think Pepsi is the best soda ever. It sounds like an opinion, but it's not. See, I either do think Pepsi is the best soda ever, or I do not think Pepsi is the best soda ever. I'm either right, wrong, lying, telling the truth, one of the two. But it is either a true statement or a false statement. The statement, Pepsi is the best soda ever, is an opinion. The statement, I think Pepsi is the best soda ever, is an objective statement. An objective statement is either true or not true. It's not neither, it's not both, and it's never in the middle. If it's not true, it's objectively not true. If it is true, it is objectively true. And you don't have to know whether or not a statement is true or not true to know that it is either true or not true. What about math? Math, however, is objective, and it doesn't matter what you call 2, and it doesn't matter what you call 4, and it doesn't matter what you use as a symbol for addition. It doesn't matter if it's in Spanish, dos más dos son cuatro. If it's in Chinese, Japanese, ni para su ni wayan. It doesn't matter if it's in French, tu pri tu fon kia. It doesn't matter if it's in English. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4. And you can argue all you want about what to call this amount and what to call this amount. But if you add this much with this much, you will always get this much. In fact, if 2 people do the same math problem in the same way and they both get different answers, either one of them is wrong or they're both wrong. Math is objective. So why is it not just an opinion if I were to say your argument is logical or illogical? Because like math, logic is an objective subject. And the laws of logic are not subject to your opinions or mine. It doesn't mean I'm right just because I said your argument is flawed, but make no mistake, your argument is either flawed or it's not. And the point here is that logic is not based on anybody's preference, best guess, or opinion. Sorry, I just had to address that real quick. So if you find yourself saying, listen, sir, that's just your opinion and it's wrong, you've already screwed up. However, it doesn't really answer the question, does it? It doesn't explain why logic is objective and how it's objective. And that's going to be the subject matter of this video. I'm going to give you the quickest, most basic crash course of logic you've ever seen. It's going to be the basics of the basics. Because I want to show you what makes an argument logical, or what prevents it from being logical. And most importantly, why. And I plan to fit it all in this one video. So, let's get started. Okay, so what is logic? Specifically, what is it? I mean, really, what is it? So before I answer that, there's a few words that I want you to get familiar with. These are words that you're going to need to know throughout the course of this video. What is a claim? A claim is the act of asserting that a statement or idea is true and it corresponds with reality. What is a belief? A belief is the act of accepting a claim, statement, or idea as true and corresponding to reality. What is truth? Truth is anything that actually does correspond to reality. Okay, so now let's answer this question. What is propositional logic? Propositional logic is a tool used to determine whether or not an argument can demonstrate the truth of its claim. Beautiful. But what's an argument? An argument is an attempt to convince someone of the truth of a statement, claim, or idea, and it usually consists of one or more premises that work together in such a way that they prove the truth of the conclusion. In terms of propositional logic, an argument is often referred to as a syllogism. Okay, so an argument is one or more premises that work together to demonstrate the truth of a conclusion. What's a premise? A premise is an assertion or claim that either comes before or follows another assertion that relates to each other in such a way that they prove the conclusion to be true. So what's a conclusion? A conclusion is a statement in an argument that is meant to indicate the truth of what the arguer is trying to convince the reader or listener of. That's what they attempt to do anyway. Now that we're all caught up with basic terminology, it's time for the fun stuff. How does one exactly evaluate the truth of an argument? What are the laws of logic? What prevents an argument from being rational? First of all, logic uses 2 methods of verification: validity and soundness. We're going to talk about both of those right now. Ah, yes, validity. Everybody wants their arguments to be valid, right? That's not valid, this is valid. What does it mean for an argument to be valid? I want you to take a look at the following argument. Take 10 very awkwardly timed seconds and try to determine whether or not the argument is valid. So go ahead and check it out. Premise 1. All men always tell the truth. Premise 2. Donald Trump is a man. Conclusion. Therefore, Donald Trump always tells the truth. So you might think this argument is invalid, and I don't blame you. But surprise, surprise, it is completely valid. Now you might be thinking to yourself at this point, But wait a minute, premise 1 is not true. I mean, premise 2 is true, but premise 1 is not true. But here's the big surprise. Validity doesn't care whether or not the premises are true. Validity only cares whether or not the conclusion would be true if the premises were true. So what does that really mean? Well, let's just assume both of the premises are true. We know that premise 1 is not true, but let's just assume both of them are. So would the conclusion be true if premise 1 and premise 2 were true? Of course it would. And that's what makes an argument valid. If the truth of the premises necessarily leads to the truth of the conclusion, the argument is valid. And when this happens, we say that the conclusion entails the premises. However, an argument must be both valid and sound. So, what about soundness? Well, soundness is pretty easy and straightforward, whereas validity is when the conclusion is true based on the truth of the premises. Soundness is when the premises are actually true. More specifically, soundness is when an argument is both valid and the premises are actually true. So the bottom line is your argument must be both valid and sound in order to demonstrate the truth of your conclusion. And it doesn't matter what you call it. The point is, whatever claims you're making must work together in harmony to demonstrate the actual conclusion that you're trying to assert. For example, here is a valid and sound argument. Premise 1. All arguments are required to be both valid and sound in order to be logical. Premise 2. All arguments are required to be logical in order to demonstrate the truth of their claim. Therefore, if an argument is valid and sound, it will demonstrate the truth of its claim. So if we assume premise 1 to be true and we assume premise 2 to be true, then we must therefore accept the conclusion is true. It's a valid argument, but premise 1 is true and premise 2 is true and the conclusion is true. This argument is sound as well, which makes it logical. As you can see, this is not just based on somebody's opinion or what just sounds really, really good. It is simply just the case that if you want to demonstrate the truth of your conclusion, your premises, that which supports your claims and supports your conclusion, they have to work together in harmony. Propositional logic is exactly accurate, not kind of accurate, accurate. It's either completely accurate or you're doing something wrong. So what governs logic? If you broke down the proverbial paper trail of philosophy and intellectual discourse, what would you find at its core? What is the very foundation of logic itself? Well, the answer is, of course, the logical absolutes. What are the logical absolutes? The logical absolutes are three specific laws that are the foundation of all rational thought. They are the foundation of all valid mathematics, all rational discourse, really the foundation of reality itself. Pretty bold claim, isn't it? Hell yeah, it is. The logical absolutes are some pretty bold laws. I mean, even the laws of physics might be different on another planet or something. Newton's law of gravity definitely changes when you use it against a whole galaxy. But the logical absolutes are true everywhere, all the time. They're true throughout this entire universe. They're true in whatever universe could possibly exist. Pretty bold claim. I already said that. To put it in perspective, the speed of light would be shattered before the logical absolutes were slightly even bent. So what are they? The law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction. So let's start with number 1, the law of identity. Number 1, the law of identity. Something is what it is, and it is not what it is not. Something that exists has a specific nature. For example, a cloud is a cloud. A horse is a horse is a horse. Everything has an identity, and it's identical to itself. Or A equals A. The next one is the law of excluded middle. Number 2, the law of excluded middle. For every proposition, either that proposition is true or its negation is true. The statement, "you are pregnant," that is either true or false. In other words, every objective proposition is either true or its negation is true. The law of non-contradiction. Number 3, the law of non-contradiction. Something cannot be both true and false at the same time in the same sense. For example, to say that a cloud is not a cloud would be a contradiction. The cloud cannot be what it is and not what it is at the same time. I'm afraid there really is no way around the logical absolutes. I mean, if you were to show these laws to be flawed, you would change the academic structure of logic overnight. And even if you wanted to demonstrate that the logical absolutes were flawed, you would have to assume they were true in order to use them to try to demonstrate they were flawed. You would have to assume they were true in order to use them to try to demonstrate they were flawed. Yes, the logical absolutes are binding, and the reason for this is because they are descriptive laws, not prescriptive laws. So what's the difference between a prescriptive and a descriptive law? A prescriptive law are laws that we invent, construct, and prescribe. These laws are subjective and they can change depending on the location or region. The speed limit, national law, state law, tax law, and they would disappear if there were no thinking minds to follow and or enforce them. Descriptive laws are laws that we discover and describe. These are objective laws, like Maxwell's equations, thermodynamics, the laws of gravity. They would exist whether or not there was a thinking mind there to evaluate these laws. So what do we know so far? Number one, logic is a tool used to determine whether or not an argument can demonstrate its claim. Number two, an argument is one or more premises that work together in such a way that they demonstrate the truth of the conclusion. Number three, logic uses validity to evaluate the structure of an argument, and it uses soundness to evaluate the content of an argument. Number four, there are subjective statements and objective statements. If it's not an objective statement, it's just an opinion. And if it's an opinion, it's neither right nor wrong. Prescriptive laws are the laws that we construct and enforce, and descriptive laws are the laws that we discover and describe. Well, I think that's it so far. Kind of. What if you violate these laws? What if you stray off the course of logical discourse? Well, that's when you find yourself committing what's known as a logical fallacy. People love their logical fallacies. They point them out all the time. And if they're used correctly, what they identify is a flaw. It's a flaw in the structure of an argument, in the soundness of an argument that prevents the argument completely from demonstrating the claim it's attempting to make. It doesn't mean the claim is wrong. It means the argument you're using to support it is flawed and it cannot support it. Here's a good example of a logical fallacy. Argument ad populum, or argument from popularity. So let me ask you a question. What if I woke up tomorrow and believed the earth was flat? Would that then make the earth flat? No? Well, what if the whole city woke up and believed it was flat? Would that be enough to make it flat? What if the whole world woke up and believed the earth was flat? Would that then make the earth flat? Of course it wouldn't, but what does this mean? It means that the amount of people who believe in a claim, or how strongly they believe in it, has no bearing on whether or not the claim is true. So if people use the amount of people who believe in their claim, or how strongly an individual believes in a claim, this is the argument from popularity, and it is a fallacious argument because the amount of people who believe in a claim cannot demonstrate the claim that they're trying to make simply by the amount of people who believe in it to begin with. All logical fallacies are based off of concepts that prevent an argument from demonstrating its conclusion. So if someone tells you that your argument is fallacious, it doesn't mean it is, but it means you might want to look into it, because if it is, it's not just an opinion, that it's flawed, and it won't demonstrate your conclusion. The fun part is they all have little cute nicknames, so don't ever let anyone say your argument is fallacious. It's a fallacy. Just a fallacy, because that doesn't really make any sense, except for the fallacy. So, real quickly, here are 20 logical fallacies that you can learn to identify in the arguments of others and your own. Number one, the argument from ignorance. Claiming X is true because you can't think of any other answer. God must have created everything. Who else could have done it? Number two, argument from authority. Claiming that something is true because someone in that authority states that it's true. 2 plus 2 is 5. And I'm right because I teach math. Number three, the fallacy is special pleading. Stating and enforcing a rule and then breaking that rule to help your own argument. Everything has a cause, except for God. Then everything does not have a cause. Number four, false dilemma or false dichotomy. Claiming that there are only two options when there could be more, or you have not demonstrated that there are not any more. You either trust me or you don't. One or the other. Number 5, red herring fallacy. And I hate fish. Using X to irrelevantly point to Y in order to divert attention from the real issue at hand. I'm sorry I was speeding, officer, but I've lost twice on Call of Duty today. Number 6, an ad hominem fallacy. Or as I like to call it, the Facebook fallacy. Claiming your opponent is wrong simply because of some negative view or aspect about your opponent specifically. That man shouldn't be president. Look at him. He's got no hair. Number 7, false equivocation fallacy. Equating two very different things as the same with the same definition. Of course God exists. Do you believe in the universe? Because the universe is God. Number 8, the no true Scotsman fallacy. Or the no black swan fallacy. This is changing the standards of a category in order to eliminate subsets of that category. Only true Christians celebrate Christmas with a picture of baby Jesus on their wall. Tom is a Christian. He doesn't have a picture of baby Jesus on his wall. He's not a true Christian. Number 9, the appeal to emotions fallacy. Playing on the empathy or sympathy of an opponent to try to coerce them into your argument. Don't eat those baby carrots. They're just babies. Number 10, the slippery slope fallacy. Assuming B must follow A without any causation or correlation. If you become sad, you'll make everyone around you sad, and then no one will talk to you anymore, and then you'll be alone forever, then that's the end. Number 11, complex question fallacy. Assuming a presupposed truth to limit your opponent's responses. When did you stop beating your wife and doing heroin and chucking cats over the fence? Number 12, the causal fallacy. This is the act of falsely attributing a cause to something without sufficient evidence. Every time I wake up, the sun rises shortly thereafter. I make the sun rise. Number 13, the tu quoque fallacy. This is a fallacy in which the opponent tries to discredit your argument by claiming you're guilty of the same thing. My wife always yells at me to shut the lights off. But 6 years ago, 2 months, 3 days, she left one of the lights on. Number 14, the fallacy of the divine. Claiming something is magical or divine because it's extraordinary to you. That magician obviously sold his soul to the devil, because I can't figure out how he does his tricks. Yeah, I never heard that one before. Number 15, the etymological fallacy. Falsely attributing an old definition or usage of a word to more modern times. Psychology originally meant the study of the soul, so what? You think that's what it studies? Number 16, the fallacy of division. If something is true for the whole, it must be true for the sum or sum of the parts. Cake is delicious, so the ingredients that make it up must also individually be delicious as well. Number 17, the fallacy of circular reasoning. This is where your opponent assumes the truth of that which they are attempting to prove. Of course I believe God exists. Says so in the Bible. Then how can you trust the Bible? God said I could trust it. Number 18, cum hoc ergo propter hoc. In other words, after this, therefore because of this. This is the act of confusing correlation and causation. Every time I have a really horrible headache, I take some Vicodin, then I pray, and the headache goes away. That's how I know prayer works. Number 19, the gambler's fallacy. This is when somebody assumes that because a specific event had happened a certain number of times, it predicts how many times it will happen in the future. I flipped a coin 20 times and it landed on tails 18 times. That means if I flip it 100 times, it will be a lot. Like a lot. It'll land on tails a lot. I need a calculator. Number 20, the psychologist's fallacy. This is when someone uses their subjective experiences to determine the specific nature of an event. There's no way you can understand philosophy. Even I don't understand it. Me. So there's quite a few more fallacies out there, and the fallacies that we went over are a little bit more complex, not by much, but it's a really good idea to check them out and get used to them. The point is each fallacy focuses on a specific concept that will prevent an argument from demonstrating its claim, regardless of what the argument is. That's the beauty of logic. It doesn't matter what the content is of an argument. Logic applies to all arguments. Now, most of what we went over was from the standpoint of deductive reasoning, which is a very powerful form of reasoning. And the other form of reasoning would be inductive reasoning, and we'll be going over that in another video. But I just wanted to get this video out of the way explaining why logic is not subject to your opinion. I really appreciate you guys watching my videos, and I hope you enjoy them. Leave any type of comment or question you want below. I'll answer it as soon as I can. And episode 4 is coming soon. Take care, guys.